Okay, good morning. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Thursday, February 27th, 2025. It's a little bit after 10:30, and we have with us the Chair of House Judiciary, who is going to talk about his committee letter because there were a couple of things he wants to make sure that we understand as we read it. So welcome.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Do you know everybody here?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't met yet.
Quite met yet,
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And we have Rep. Mike Nigro from Bennington who's on Zoom. So
Great. So Martin Malone, a representative from South Burlington, Chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. So we did submit our rather long memo. Sorry. Hopefully it's
for the longest.
yeah, hopefully not too long. Too long didn't read, but I can kind of summarize. So there's really three things driving our recommendation. One is really getting accountability in our courts for deterrence purposes. And that really requires having consequences close to where there's been behavior, where there's been criminal behavior. And to get at that, we need to properly resource the criminal justice system. We did that last year and added 3 judges, added state's attorneys, deputy state's attorneys, staff, gave more money to the Defender General's office and such. But that was really a 2-year plan that we had last year, and it was kind of gearing up with those resources. And we still have some of those needs, but it's actually adjusted somewhat from what we were looking at last year. The second thing is just dealing with victims, and there's been significant decrease in the funding going to victim services, Vermont Victim Services, the network, and state's attorneys, victim advocates. And that is also somewhat related to the delay that we're seeing in the court as far as the need to bolster the victim services, because victims are experiencing more delays in their cases being processed in court. So we want to make sure that we're providing the supports to those victims, because that support actually happens early in the process as they're waiting for the outcomes of their cases. So those are kind of related. The third is access to civil justice, and that's where legal aid comes in, the Access to Justice Coalition and such, where we are seeing backlogs and individuals really needing assistance with civil court matters such as foreclosures, evictions, discrimination cases, et cetera. So those are the 3 kind of driving factors for this. But so we had a vote on this bill, on this letter of 6-5, which was rather interesting. And it was not necessarily reflective of a disagreement over the need for some of these things. And you can certainly, talk individually with with folks that voted against it. It was more of, I think, the order that we have this in, and a number of individuals would have had the state's attorney's request first, and then probably the rest would flow the way that we have it in here. And I'll explain the reason why that wasn't done and agreed to by the majority of the committee, and that is in no way to suggest that the state's attorney's requests are not critical, and we believe that they really are. But it's tough. It's tough when you ask us to prioritize. So
know what that's like.
yes, I do know that. In fact, I probably left more of those decisions in your lap than I wish I would have been able to, because I only have like 2 tiers.
Question.
Yeah.
I didn't add this up, but it looked like a lot, and you're right, it is a long letter. What was the total request when we talk about priorities?
Right.
Total request.
And I forgot my piece of paper that I added all those figures upstairs, but if I'm recalling right, the tier 1 is around $11 million. So
over and above what the governor's
that is
recommending.
correct. All of these are over and above. That's correct.
Okay, now
Did you
now
take
we're over
anything out of the
200.
governor's record?
Right. What's that?
Did you take anything out of the record?
No. No, we did not.
So this adds to the 200 million or so we have.
That is correct. That's correct. So, so the reason we put pre-charge diversion first and transport deputies second is I think was the strength of the evidence of how that will make a difference. If we don't fund pre-charge diversion, over the last 3 years, pre-charge has resolved on average, over 600 cases a year. Those are cases that would go into the judiciary. One of two things would happen. Either they would never be charged and we'd have no accountability for individuals who are now going through that process, or it would go to the court and that slows down accountability and it further backlogs the court. And so we had definitive numbers on that, and that's why that is first. It's also because we're at an important point. You know, we've spent a lot of time last session in establishing a program for pre-charge diversion. And we're at a transition point where it's pretty critical that we get that off the ground. So that's a couple of reasons why that ended up being first.
We have a question.
Yeah.
So your pre-charge diversion, has it been ongoing that they've been doing that?
So pre-charge diversion has been ongoing in some locations, actually throughout the state, but not in a programmatic way. And it has been historically funded by the Department of Corrections. And over the last few years, we've kept on hearing that Department of Corrections was not going to be continuing to fund that because it doesn't really make sense for what, really their jurisdiction is. So they are not funding it. And you're welcome to take the money from DOC and move it over there. I wouldn't object to that, but that's your decision.
What I was getting to is it working? What kind of recidivism are you getting out of that? Are you getting numbers on that yet?
So we've had a couple studies on our website that was done by Crime Research Group, one addressing recidivism. Very good outcomes if it's first time individuals going into pre-charge or into diversion just generally. Not such good outcomes if they're repeat offenders. And the policies that state's attorneys are coming up with for pre-charge diversion, often, if not always, a factor is whether this is somebody who is a repeat offender. That doesn't mean it doesn't work for them, but the focus should be on really first-time offenders, lower level crimes. And there's definitely a report from Crime Research Group that finds that the recidivism rate is very much more positive for that rather than going in the criminal justice system.
So have the courts been doing the first-time offenders? What proportion of multi-offense people have been going into that?
I don't have the exact figure on that, but I do know that 20% of misdemeanors are going through diversion process right now.
People on the street, they really are getting annoyed with the revolving door.
Sure. And pre-charge diversion is probably not appropriate for those individuals. And that's not what this is focused on. But it nevertheless is taking pressure off of the courts from
They
diversion.
deal with the other ones.
So they can right. So they can deal with the repeat offenders and such.
So the AGs will putting more AGs in place increase the pass-through, because we know we got what, 20.
Well, I will get to that in 1 second, definitely.
Okay, and Rep. Dickinson had a question.
Yeah, I'm just curious, does this include people who were referred to drug courts?
Not pre-charge diversion at this point.
Okay, this is
That's
just
court
the diversion.
diversion. That's Tamarack, and that has to be through the court at this point.
Yeah.
Sometime down the road, maybe that's something that can expand, but
That's something that supposedly has worked in some
correct.
places. Yeah.
Right. But that's not what this is.
Yeah, the other thing is that when you get people with repeat or more serious things that are with recidivism, when the crime statistic shows that it doesn't work as well.
Right.
When I was on institutions, somebody in Wyndham County or Windsor County had this, a sheriff was doing this stuff, and the defense attorneys did not like it. Now maybe that's not for the simple diversion with kids driving around DUI that are underage or something. I'm not sure, the really simple ones.
Right.
Where I know it does work,
Right.
through diversion. But when you get to something that's more serious, did you hear from the defense attorneys? I guess you want to hear.
So we've had pretty universal support for this, including from the defense bar. It takes the pre-charge diversion. Defense counsel doesn't even have to be involved, nor does the prosecutor, although different counties, they do want it to go through a prosecutor but it's before any charges are put into place. So, so no, the courts, the state's attorneys, defenders, victim advocates, because this often is a better approach for victims as well, have all supported the pre-charge diversion program. So
Thank you.
at the beginning of last session, that wasn't the case, but we worked really hard with it had to do with the discretion of the state's attorneys, but we resolved that over the course of taking up that bill. So the other thing, real quick on pre-charge diversion, I'll jump to the other one, is there's also a study by Crime Research Group that shows that cases going through pre-charge or through diversion, I should say, just generally, are much less costly than sending it to court. And that's also on our website if that's something that, in fact, I think we even linked to it in this
Okay.
memo. The transport deputies, we had really good testimony where we looked into remote hearings and transports, the joint hearing with House Corrections, and I think they actually have the same recommendation that we have. I didn't realize they were doing that. That getting individuals from prison, the people who are being detained pre-trial to court, can expedite getting cases resolved is the bottom line. And the governors recommend there's vacancy savings that would cost us 6 transport deputies, which would take us down to 18. And we've been getting testimony that they need more. And I think that's one of the second place where we have really strong testimony that will also make a significant impact on being able to expedite processing of cases, because it just generally works better to have the individuals in court for their hearings. Things can be resolved much more rapidly.
Right.
And we got good testimony of that. So that's why that was our second
Okay, Tom?
main item.
So we heard much of the same information, but through a different lens earlier this year. So I'm just curious to know what if you received testimony from the administration about justifying in basically taking away this funding in the face of the need. If they had a justification or reasoning for the number that they chose to put in the budget or to deal with that.
So it's kind of interesting because we had the commissioner of the Department of Corrections testified of how important, how remote hearings not working and we need to do more transporting. Would I be able to nail him down to say he is opposed to the governor's budget that was taking away 6? Well, he didn't. He said, he supports. From the testimony, I understood that there was support from courts, from state's attorneys, and from the Department of Corrections that we need to do more transports. And therefore, we need more transport deputies. I don't recall if I asked him specifically, does he disagree with the governor's recommend? But everything he said during that testimony sure sounded like it. Yeah. So,
One more question. We don't have much time, guys. We're supposed to be short.
Are still, I know they were transporting for ICE or for federal.
we did ask about that because that's DOC doing transports. That's not the transport deputies. And we did ask about that, and it doesn't sound like DOC has a lot of capacity beyond what they're already doing. So the one thing I will mention, given the limited time I have, is I'm going to skip the victims. I think we've explained that pretty well.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention again the state's attorneys that the reason why they are not number 1 or 2 is not because we absolutely believe, we don't believe in the need for them, but it's a little less clear where we are as far as how much backlog will be cleared. And we're getting more information right now from the 3 additional judges, the additional staff, and we may have some time to see, are we making, enough improvement with where we are right now? I don't think we probably are, but it was a little cloudier as far as what the outcomes would be. I would say absolutely those are important positions, particularly going to the from the limited service to the permanent positions because of difficulty in hiring attorneys generally in the state, and particularly for the 4 unfilled positions right now that will help them fill those. So.
Okay, thanks. And back to the transport deputies, so it's really 1.473 million because you're taking out the vacancy savings and adding 6. So that sounds like it's more than 6 people that you're talking about there.
It would be 12. I mean, there's 24 spots right now.
Okay.
They don't have, they're down a couple. I don't remember exactly how many they're down. And they really need 30, from what we understand. And there's other issues regarding safety that are involved that sometimes they really best practice is to have 2 people in the transports, and that's not always possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Great. And
So
It-
I know you've got a whole bunch of requests, but it brings me also to caution. I hear a 6-5 vote. That there wasn't bipartisan agreement at all.
Right.
Is it just because of the flipping of 1 and 2, or is there more? I mean, was everybody in agreement with the extra money for, the first item, or was it really, they were just focused on and maybe.
I think what I can say is I had a lot of support for the first and the second and the fourth. Maybe not as much support for the victim component. But that's where I think, now, whether I would have had a 11-0 vote, probably not. I think there's a couple who just wouldn't vote for anything that we did on this. But there seemed to be general agreement of those 3 parts of the ask. But we think that the victims advocate component is very critical as well. And I would say the first and second really, in my view, are as much that we can provide for those 2. And then if there's more, divvying it up among the other ones in our tier 1 is kind of where I'm hoping you folks will go.
Thank you.
All right, and this is Martin, yes, at Trevor's, and you know that, you all better. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the time. I really appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
here, and next we have the Attorney General's office. So come on down, up, over. Whoever is here. So now, Attorney General, I'm not sure whether you have been in the room. Were you in here earlier, or just for your folks here for budget?
I was not here, because I didn't actually know that the committee room moved. So I was across the street, like, what's going on here?
Okay, so why don't we introduce ourselves, since we
Wonderful.
have been in the room, and everybody else can just hear us again.
And I want to hear the 10.
Oh, is this the time we're gonna?
That'd be me.
10 towns to represent.
Yeah, so Dave, let's start with you.
Good morning, I'm Dave Giacoboni from Morrisville. I represent Lamar, Washington. Greetings, everybody.
So I'm John Kosenska from Berg, and I do represent 10 towns in Essex, Caledonia. So we start with Berg and go up to East Haven and Victory and Granby and Guildhall, Lunenburg, Maidstone, Brunswick, Bloomfield, and beautiful area of Bergen.
Well done.
All right. We haven't yet figured out if he's got more towns than any other rep, but probably does. And then we have on the screen, right?
Mike Nacro, I represent Bennington and Pownell.
Great.
Thank you. Waterbury representing the Washington Chittenden district.
Jim Harrison, Chittenden, Mendon, Killington, and Pittsfield.
No March Madness comments.
Well, we have a former champion.
I thought you should have the opportunity to mention that. I'm Robin Shy from Middlebury. Welcome.
Fifth Lily from Burlington.
Trevor Squirrel, Underhill, and Jericho.
Wayne Rush, Highgate, Franklin, Berkshire, and Richford.
Mike Merwicki from your home county and Sarah London's home county of Wyndham.
One of my home counties. My dad's grocery store was in that county, but technically I did in a different county.
I'm Linda Dickinson and I represent St. Albans Town.
I am Charity Clark. I'm the Attorney General, and I'm here with Marcy Hodgkin, who is our CFO. That's probably not her title, but that's how it's shorter than her real title, and that's what I remember. So I'll tell you that she does all of the amazing work of managing the finances of the office. And of course, the incomparable Willa Farrell. Everybody in the State House knows Willa, who is the director of the Community Justice Unit and has been doing an amazing job for many years. So we are here to present our budget. And you probably have before you the slide program. Yeah, the slides that we have. So the first slide, should I just jump right in? Okay, right ahead. So the first slide is just a really nice overview of our office. I know some of you, are there any new members here or you've all been in?
Everybody's been here before.
Okay.
You are returning from, weren't here last biennium, but have been.
Been in before. Okay, great. So we're not totally unfamiliar to you, but I will say we refined our mission last year to, we think, more accurately reflect what our work is in the office. So we flag it there as our guiding words. And the governor's recommended budget pie chart is 17.1 million. We will be asking for a little of a difference, which I'll go through. So the summary for us, I think it helps to describe the office. We have 147 positions that we manage statewide. We have a very complicated structure that also does not include the individuals we don't manage, but are connected to our office, specifically UVM employees at the Consumer Assistance Program, employees at the Restorative Justice organizations in the community that WILA's, we're kind of the umbrella organization, but it's 147 positions that we manage. There are 101 exempt employees, 97 AAGs, and 46 classifieds. But we only have 92 positions on the AGO payroll. The rest are actually embedded in agencies. So they have position numbers for those agencies, but we supervise them. So it's a unique arrangement. We have two separate appropriations. I will go through the Attorney General's office as a whole, and Willa will go through the for diversion and all of the work that she does. We have 6 divisions. The administration division is what we know as the front office. The front office, though there are members here, so I'll introduce them. My chief of staff is Lauren Yondel, and Rob McDougall is the Deputy Attorney General. And we have Sarah London, who is the Chief Assistant Attorney General, and Todd Delos is the Director of Legislation and Policy. And we also, in the front office, we have our wonderful front desk person who has been, past month, been really receiving a lot of emails and phone calls from a lot of people. It's been an exciting time. And of course, we have our IT business office, and Marcy is central to that. See here. We also have the Environmental and Public Protection Division. In that division, in addition to consumer and environmental units, is the Civil Rights Unit. Civil rights, I'm sure you are familiar with their work, but they do mostly employment law type discrimination complaints and things of that nature. We also have the Consumer Assistance Program, which we'll talk about later, but of course, that's a wonderful resource to all legislators. So I always highlight it, because if you have a constituent who has an issue or they need help navigating state government, that's what they're great at. So you can always reach out. The criminal division consists of the criminal unit, the Medicaid fraud unit, which is grant funded from the federal government, and then the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, also funded in part from a federal grant. And then we have general counsel and administrative law. This is where we have folks who are, well, it's a variety of lawyers, but a lot of them are embedded again we're not embedded, but they serve an agency like the Agency of Education or taxes or something like that. And then we have administrative law, and they do a lot of litigation in the administrative context. Our Human Services Division, I think that's our largest. And they serve the departments and agencies at the Agency of Human Services. Our Civil Division is the unit or the division that defends the state when the state is sued. So that's us in a nutshell. I tried to do that quickly, but really I could brag about every one of these for a long time. So I'm trying not to do that. If you turn the slide, we'll get into some of the math. So Marcy puts this together and does a really good job. but I wanted to just walk through it. I think it's helpful. You can see that most of our expenses are personnel expenses, so it's people. We have a little bit of a change from the governor's recommend, and when it comes to that, and I will walk us through that in a minute. Our operating expenses have been decreased, and we try to put a little sidebar so that we can describe some of the decreases. If I could just summarize some of them. One is, recall we had this very big case known as EB5, and we had a lot of documents related to that case. There's it's not a software, I don't know what they call it anymore, a program called Everlaw that we have used for a few cases, but because we had so many documents, it was very expensive. So now that we've not had to do that, it saved us some money. So that's one of the reasons. And then the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, I mentioned, ICAC, we call them. There was just a change from operating to personal services. So it's just a change in where it's located. So flagging that for you. And then, of course, we had increases related that we couldn't control: health insurance, the Pay Act, and an increase in retirement. Below this is the funding source. You can see the general fund is a lot of where we're getting a lot of our a source for funding. The special fund, there's below in the green box, there's descriptions of each of the fund. I'm sure you're familiar with them because you're on the Appropriations Committee. For the special fund for us, this is a lot of like consumer recoveries and that our consumer unit. So, things like consumer recoveries would be like, I want to say tobacco, but maybe that's in its own thing. Yeah, the Google, we got $3 million. Google settled over violating the Consumer Protection Act. Federal fund, these are the grants that I was talking about. So Medicaid fraud, we have a grant that we are funded with. And then the interdepartment transfer, this is EB5 litigation expenses that used to be covered by DFR. And that was a transition that was made. So that is the overview of the budget.
A couple of questions, and maybe we're going to get to them later.
Okay.
Nice to see the EB5 going down. We put something in the budget adjustment for the $3 million payment for this year. And then possibly 4 million for the following year is what, but that number is going to be dependent on how many green cards, right? So where is that now?
So the timing is that we have by July 1st of this year to get those green cards in motion, but there's a 6-month, okay, things are in motion. So really it's kind of December we're looking at. We have worked incredibly hard, as you can imagine, to help all of help the receiver who's helping with the green cards. And we have talked with the congressional delegation. We have a lawyer working on it outside of our office who's an expert in immigration. We have talked regularly with everyone you can think of. I personally have met many times with folks who are involved. And we are really fortunate that there was success. I'll give you like an example, but there was success in getting green cards using an affidavit that had been provided by Michael Pichek, who at the time was working at DFR. And once we had that, we knew, okay, if someone is using this affidavit, which explains everything that happened in the backstory and the financial impact and stuff, they will be able to get a green card. So we were able to put things in motion to try to get everyone to use this affidavit with their application so that they could get a green card. And, keep in mind, we can only do what we can do in terms of helping that person do the things that they need to do. We can't
do some stuff too.
We can't, exactly. And the settlement acknowledges that. So as long as we're doing what we need to do and we're doing as far as we can, we're in a really good place. So while we don't know right now what this is going to look like or what the final number will be, I want to reassure you that we are working as hard as possible. And we already have been successful at making sure that people get their green card. So that total number is already going down, and we can continue to keep you updated. We work really closely with the receiver. We don't have like direct access to the information. Only the receiver does. That's not something that we're privy to, unfortunately. So we're working closely with him and doing everything that we possibly can to get that number down, hopefully to zero.
Okay, so you expect it'll be less than 4 million?
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Rep. LaRouche.
Given the change in administration in DC, the immigration issues, do you envision any possible risk that there could be any roadblocks to where you are heading with your cars now?
I don't think so because, well, unless Congress moves really quickly. But the laws are the laws and we know them well. So we're just following the law, unless they move really quickly. But even then I don't. So I'm not that worried, but it's a good point to keep an eye on.
I think it's a different kind of immigration to get a
It's
green
true.
card.
Yeah. But if the government is being
Yeah.
dismantled, valid concern.
So my other question is, I noticed you are getting some federal funds, you said, and for Medicaid fraud. Have you had any problems drawing down federal funds at this point?
No, but it's interesting that you flagged that because when we were, when I was trying to explain our lawsuit related to the OMB memo and the freezing of federal funds, and I was like, this isn't necessarily, these like liberal crunchy granola bleeding heart type programs that we love. It's also public safety. I don't think everyone realized that, this was involved every facet of what we do and including the, grants that we always get, and many get that relate to public safety, which is such an important issue. But especially now, I feel like it's the forefront of people's minds. So I'm really glad that we were successful in that lawsuit and blocking that from happening because that would have been really harmful to the state. Mhm. All right, should we move to my brag slide? I won't belabor this. I feel like you trust that we're doing good work, but we have, this is why we work at the Attorney General's office. It gives us so much satisfaction to be serving Vermont and Vermonters. It begins with enforcement actions. We sued, and I'm going to try to not go on and on, but I'm very proud of the work that we're doing here. We sued under the Consumer Protection Act, the fossil fuel companies who lied to us or withheld information that they had about the impacts of fossil fuel, depriving consumers of the choice to make an informed choice about the purchasing they were doing related to fossil fuels. We also sued the manufacturers of PFAS and related chemicals, the opioid marketers and other people who are responsible for the opioid crisis. As you know, we've gotten a lot of money back and will continue to get a lot of money for the state for the harms that were perpetrated against us. We sued both Meta and TikTok regarding their social media platforms and the harm that they were.
We have a question.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I have my reading glasses on, so I can't see far.
No, that's.
We'll just.
On the first one, as you know, the legislature set up last year a climate recovery fund. And I thought I had seen somewhere that the oil industry was suing the state over the setup of that recovery fund. So are you defending, have that suit started, and what costs are we incurring to defend that?
So if you look at bullet 3, that is a bullet that we have described. So there are a few
That's the opioid.
laws. I'm sorry, the black bullet, not the clear one. Defending laws passed by Vermont legislature, including,
Okay, I did read
and it
that.
lists, and we supported all of these. But we did get sued and we are defending the law. So, and that's one of them that we'll be
Do you know
defending.
what we've incurred for costs so far?
On that one,
Yeah.
I think it's 0 because we haven't actually,
We-
Yeah, here's Rob.
Yeah, I'm Deputy Attorney General McDougal. We were just served today.
I wonder, okay,
I came in
I,
this morning,
I thought
so it's just starting. Right now, it's all in-house. And so
It's
there's
too
no-
early to know what.
Right. So the Exxon thing that you're mentioning up here is something that I think you're doing, a bunch of
That's different.
states are doing. That's a different thing that was discovered.
I don't know if a bunch of states are doing it, but yeah, it's totally different. That's the Consumer Protection Act that's focused on consumers. You can't like mislead consumers or be deceptive or lie to them. And we have, the evidence in our view shows that the fossil fuel industry that we are targeting, they They did. They had the information. They had the scientists saying this is what's going to happen. And they never told us. They actively tried to be deceptive and not tell us that they continue making money off of their products. That's what that is based on.
Right, that's a different.
Yeah, different. We also are suing Monsanto for producing, marketing, and selling PCBs. And this is a lawsuit that is focused on our natural resources as well as the schools that were impacted. And recall that the legislature had set up a statewide school testing program, and that enabled us to include schools in our lawsuit, which creates economies of scale, et cetera. So that was good. We also have sued PBMs. We have almost all of the PBMs here in Vermont are CVS, or what was called Express Scripts, known as Express Scripts. So we have sued them as well. And then we have continued to enforce, in particular, the online sales ban of tobacco products, which includes vaping. We work with the Department of Liquor and Lottery and their investigators to do that work. We're the lawyers, and we just have an ongoing, unfortunately, stream of work in that capacity, and we do recover for the state. We also
I want to back up to the opioid quickly, because I'm not sure that you mentioned it. I know we know about the 22 million that's supposed to be, what's your guess as to when that's actually going to show up?
Well, we don't know, but I said a year, and the AAG handling the case gave me a look. It was like maybe as early as a year. So I might be slightly optimistic, yes, but I have hope.
That's good.
Yeah. And this is just a sampling. I'm giving you some of the like more recent or the hot issues that were in the news recently.
I just have a quick question about how your office then, if we receive a settlement, then what does your office recover? How is that worked out in terms of, compensating the state for the attorney's fees that we've incurred?
Well, so generally things just come over to you, but with attorney's fees, I actually don't know. Maybe Marcy can answer that, what the mechanism is.
So generally with a consumer settlement, we have spending authority from you all for a percentage of that for an amount. So when consumer settlements come in, the first thing they do is replenish that fund for that spending authority. The next thing they do is replenish the complex litigation special fund that you all set up, if there's any cost in there. And then finally, after that, whatever is left of our consumer settlements comes to this body to do, generally it's a direct app to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year for the balance.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. We also secured a jury conviction in an aggravated sexual assault of a child that is now awaiting sentencing. I mentioned ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, it's a law enforcement agency within our office. So they have investigators, they have two canines, and they do critical work protecting Vermont's most vulnerable small children, essentially, and babies from sexual assault and other crimes. I mentioned already that we're defending laws that we've unfortunately been sued over. We also provide general counseling to state agencies. And that involves, this is like the classic example is reviewing a contract. And we have that expertise as well. But we have, as we've discussed, embedded AAGs and others who are serving the administration. And we continue to lead on the issue of data privacy and data security. We are the recipient of notifications under the Data Security Notification Act. So we have a lot of expertise in that area, information about that. In addition, I would say that expertise is coupled with the consumer assistance programs work with identity theft and scams, which relate to, of course, data. So we have a lot of expertise in that area, and we try to provide education. And of course, we try to support the work of the legislature in that arena as well. Obviously, you all passed a groundbreaking law last year that unfortunately was vetoed, but maybe we'll see another one soon because data privacy is really critical. So that is the end of this slide. If anyone has any questions, that would be great.
So you prosecuted a sexual assault case after that. So how many, do you actually pursue many of those criminal charges? We get the state's attorneys doing a lot. We have this huge backlog in the system.
Yeah.
So how much of that kind of work are you doing?
Well, when it comes to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, because it's within our office, we really get all of that. Our lawyers are getting all of that work. So they don't have lawyers, they are the investigators, and we have the lawyers. So a lot of our lawyers are getting that work. So that's where it's headed. A lot of times, of course, there is no victim here in Vermont. This is when it comes to what used to be called child pornography, this child sex abuse material. It could be a child in another country and, the image is there, but there isn't someone here in Vermont who's being harmed directly. Unfortunately, there often is, however, and that work goes to the lawyers in my office. Yeah, the state's attorneys are responsible for public safety within their counties. And we focus on violent crimes in our office. And that's just my prerogative. But that's what we're focused on. And so when you see the cases that we handle, they are frequently cases like this one, child sexual assault.
Could do more if you wanted.
More violent crimes. Yeah. Yep. We've offered and so far have not, it is where it is. Okay. So this is the slide that, describes the positions that we're asking for that are in addition to the governor's recommend. So I want to walk through each and each one of these I think is valuable and important and would love to have the funding. So I hope that I'm able to persuade you to see things the way I see them. The first is base funding for an appellate unit assistant attorney general. This is a position that we requested in the BAA. We have the funding, but we would like to make this a position going forward. This is a position to handle two things. The first is, so let me say a little bit about the appellate unit. Appellate obviously is the appeals level of litigation. So the trial level and then appeals level. The appellate unit, which currently consists of 2 lawyers and a paralegal, they are experts in constitutional law. When the state is sued over a law that we pass, that is the number one. Oh, this is an unconstitutional law and we're defending it. So they are experts in constitutional law. In addition to that work and all the appellate work that they're doing when the state is involved in an appeals case, which is very frequently all the time, we also have assigned them the work of when the Trump administration has violated the Constitution or federal statute, and we have had to sue to rectify that. It is this unit who handles that. That's because they're constitutional lawyers, and generally in every case we've sued so far, the Constitution has been violated. The challenge, of course, is that there's only 2 of them, 2 lawyers and 1 paralegal, and they are stretched extremely thin. I think we would have been okay if we had a different administration right now on the federal level, or the administration was taking a different tack. Unfortunately, these lawyers are working like every day. It's not sustainable, and nor is it humane. We're all working every day, but there's no end in sight. Obviously, cases take many years. Every case that we are involved with is going to be a long process. And so this position is necessary to make sure that we are a sustainable operation, and also that the people, the 3 core people who are in that unit, stay in that unit and aren't thinking, forget this, I'm out of here. This is too much. I can't work every holiday, because that's definitely what they've been doing, and every night and every weekend.
We have a question.
Yes.
So this is position requested in the GAA.
Yep.
My memory's not always what it used to be. I don't remember that request. In the House, I remember the request for the pre-charge administrator position. Is that something the Senate added, or?
Yeah.
It could be because there was no money attached. Oh, Marcy's saying yes.
The Senate put that in.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a request that came to the House?
Yeah, Trevor.
I can just clarify, we had the pre-charge position that we put in there for actual request, and we had time to debate that and take that action. We had a request to put an additional position in, but it came late in the process. That's why the Senate took action.
Yeah.
And we don't, at this point, know where the BAA.
That's right.
Right.
That's right, but it's on our list.
Yeah,
of
okay.
discussion items.
Thank
Yep.
you.
So there you have that position, and I'm happy to answer questions about it, but I'll keep going. The second is what I'm kind of calling a big tech assistant attorney general. So our consumer unit is handling all of violations against of the Consumer Protection Act, which I've just mentioned. So you understand the basis of the Consumer Protection Act. Obviously, the marketplace is gigantic, and there are very many more violations than our 6 lawyers in consumer can currently handle. We focus on the ones that harm the most Vermonters. We try to focus and prioritize, but the truth is there are many more violations out there that we are not handling and not pursuing. This position would allow us to have an expert on especially big tech issues. And my philosophy is that a company who is interfacing with the most Vermonters and doing something that is violating the Consumer Protection Act is doing a lot of harm. And it's good for us to have a lawyer who can specialize in that work and pursue a case against that entity. I'm going to give you an example. We had a lawyer in our office who identified a company named Blackbaud who, because they had to report to our office that they had a security breach, and they notified us. And when we looked into it, we found that their practices, which they have since rectified, were extremely egregious to the point where the kind of hacker who got into their system couldn't even get their attention because their security practices were so lack. Our assistant attorney general joined another person he knew in another state who was also very tech savvy and persuaded the office to take a case against this company. And eventually other states joined. So it was our idea. Great. That meant that we were on lead. We were handling the case. And when we're lead, you get more money when we settle. We were lead in the tobacco case. And thanks to former Chief Justice Amistoy, former Attorney General Amistoy, and a former Attorney General Bill Sorrell, we got an extra $100 million when all was said and done. It was $10 million for 10 years because we were lead. So when you have the capacity to be lead, you get more money. Back to my Blackbaud story. So when settlement was said and done, we got $3 million. And just as an example, next door, New Hampshire, with twice as many people, they only got $400,000. We got so much more money because it was our idea and we were on the committee. Normally, we are not on the committee. We don't have the capacity. We don't have enough lawyers. This assistant attorney general would enable us to do better at enforcing the Consumer Protection Act, and also would, in my opinion, very quickly pay for itself. So this is an opportunity that occurred to me. I thought I would share it with you and say, I think this would be a good idea. I know that it is a tight budget year, but in my opinion, this position would very quickly pay for itself.
So we have a question, Representative.
So just real quick, just so I understand.
Mhm.
So we currently don't have the capacity to pursue these,
All of them, yeah.
all of them as a state. So just another state would then pick that up.
That would
So
happen.
what do you do when you receive that?
For this case, it was the Blackbaud example, because it was literally our idea. No one else was going to even bring this case. So if we had someone who was an expert in this kind of law, they would be able to better sort of monitor either the notifications to us or other sources for violations or potential violations that could be out there that we could pursue. And also think about how much technology has changed, even in the past 10 years. It's changing very quickly, in part because there aren't enough people to regulate it and say, whoa, this is not okay. This is outlandish or not really in the scope of what's legal right now. I think a lot of people are scrambling, particularly when it comes to artificial intelligence.
That was my next one.
Yeah, it feels like runaway, and there's just not a lot of, there's not enough people to kind of rein in an industry that is taking, in my opinion, the model of ask for forgiveness and not for permission. Ultimately, what our goal is to protect consumers, and in protecting consumers, we protect the marketplace. I have long been really concerned about artificial intelligence because I know that if consumers don't trust the marketplace, they're not going to buy things, and that's bad for the economy. Think about what happened with robocalls. No one answers the phone anymore, and it's because of robocalls. Imagine if artificial intelligence, like use of deep fake, deep fakes are being used right now to scam people out of their money. A deep fake is when technology is used to make someone seem like they're saying something or doing something they're not. We've had those scams that have used celebrities like Taylor Swift or Selena Gomez to scam people. Imagine if people are afraid of buying things online because they think this could be a scam, and now the economy is suffering because consumers aren't buying things. I could go on and on about this, but that's just a thought on that one. All right, so we'll go on to number 3. This won't be a surprise to you because we obviously have been talking about this one for a while. You had passed the Great Restorative Justice Bill last year. This was a request that we'd already made in the BAA. We need to have the capacity to do the work that bill entailed. That was creating pre-charge programs statewide. Currently, pre-charge is not statewide. It exists in the Department of Corrections. And if you're wondering, why can't we just take the money from the Department of Corrections and bring it to the Attorney General's office? Because that's what I asked. It's because the person handling that work is doing a bunch of other stuff, and it's not so easy to just like slice off pre-charge. In addition, it's more work because this is a statewide program. It's being, professionalized isn't the word, but it's being, it's being put into a system that connects with all the other restorative justice work that we do with Willa at the helm. And we need the position, as I said in my letter to the body when the governor vetoed that bill. Yes, we absolutely have the capacity for last year up until now, but now we need the position in order to do the work. And the final ask is a position that honestly has surpassed my expectation. You might recall in 2022, the legislature passed a home improvement bill. It created a registry with the Secretary of State's office. It required the contractors with a contract that's $10,000 or more to register, have a contract, get insurance. And the governor initially vetoed that bill. And when it came back over, I think there was efforts made to try to figure out a way to get that across the finish line. One of the things that was proposed was creating a position at the Consumer Assistance Program for a home improvement specialist, someone who was an expert in the law and how to help not just consumers who had a problem with a home improvement contractor, but the contractor themselves too. We offer a mediation service, so we often will be going back and forth. So we hired someone, you passed that, it was great. We hired someone less than 2 years ago. The person who is doing the work is awesome. He was a contractor and he was also a paralegal. So he has both of those skill sets and he is surpassing my expectations. The statistic is that he has resolved $687,000 he's returned to Vermonters. So if you want to tell your constituents government is working for them, I will tell you when we look at complaints, next week is Consumer Protection Week, and we'll be releasing our top 10 complaints of 2024. And home improvement is always near the top. It's always in the top 3. And it's because it's so expensive. We get a lot of calls related to home improvement contractors and those kinds of issues. So that we have someone who's able to serve the people who call our office, educating consumers. He literally goes to Home Depot, and he's ready to educate consumers and contractors. It's a great position. Honestly, we pitched it and it really has surpassed my expectations. So that has been a limited service position. We would like to make that a permanent position. Honestly, it's been great, a really great addition to the team, and I think doing great work on that issue that is so important to people.
May I just jump in with a
Yes, go
question?
ahead, Tate.
Thank you. I'm intrigued by all this. I wish I knew more about it, but it would it feels like there's unlimited opportunity, sadly, because there's a lot of criminal activity. But I can imagine you hiring an FTE and that person becoming saturated fairly quickly. Is there a different model whereby if we had some one-time funds, you could subcontract out with experts in the legal field and say, John, I want to hire you, I've got 3 or 4 cases and here's your standard rate, but if we win, there's a larger contingency for you?
We have different relationships with lawyers like that. We do. But, and Rob probably can speak to this more eloquently than I can. We prefer to have the state lawyers doing the work. It's more economical for the state. We get more money at the end if we can. It's great to have the expertise to be, nurturing and cultivating the lawyers. We we try to mentor people. We have continuing legal education programs so that the people become experts in their field. For example, I would go head to head with any consumer lawyer in the state. There's no one in my consumer division unit that has less expertise than a consumer lawyer in the state, because that's what they do every single day, all day long. Like, they're just really experts. And there's certain cases we do have people, often they're out of state, who also are experts. Like, if they handled that case for another state somewhere else. And sometimes we simply don't have the capacity and we have to, but it's not my preference. Rob, did you want to add anything to that?
No, again, Rob McDougal, Deputy Attorney General, for the record. I think Charity's right. We use some outside help on contingency basis for some of the cases we have, like PFAS, like the case against Monsanto. We have an AAG assigned to that case, and then we bring in outside help and expertise to deal with some of those bigger company cases. I think some of the stuff that we're talking about in these requests are cases that would typically be handled by a line AAG if we had the capacity. I can't think of many instances where we had an outside lawyer take a case and go forward, and then also have the benefit of the multi-state work that we get. So when we're talking about multi-states, we're partnering with other AG's offices around the country. That's typically all AAGs in that group. Sometimes they bring in someone to help along the way, but I can't think of one offhand where it's only an outside counsel on a multi-state group like that, and nor do I know if other states would accept that. So it might close some doors to us on some of the multi-state work if we did that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, and maybe you can explain how this works better. For the home improvement complaint situation, and I've seen this in other parts of places in the legislature where we have like, precious metals or, other people who are trying to prevent fraud and all kinds of, the copy stealing the homes,
yeah,
bring them
right.
to a junkyard. My understanding is that I worked on something with this in the summer study. OPR does the registration and handles all of that. So if there's a complaint, they don't enforce and they're dependent on you, or how does that work?
Well, we would do that. And I will say that from my perspective, a lot of the complaints that we get, it's not fraud. It's not like a scammer. It's a very small business person who maybe isn't as savvy when it comes to, scheduling or contracts or things like that. And some of it is like a differing expectation. The homeowner expected this would be done. The contractor expected this would be done. And that's why we always encourage contracts so that everyone has an expectation of what's going to happen. I think that's part of why this position is so successful and impactful, because they're able to sort of say, oh, hey, a homeowner, you don't know this, but actually, the general practice with contractors is they do X, Y, Z. Or, hey, contractor, you don't realize this, but you have to be doing this or that. And the homeowner is expecting this. And that's why it's so impactful, because it is a mediation. It's sort of saying, we're not even necessarily taking sides. We're just saying there was, the I's weren't dotted, the T's weren't crossed, or there was a miscommunication, or, hey, you're taking too long. You're going to need to give them their money back or do something else, and just sort of help the parties get to a resolution where they're both satisfied and can move on. So it's a little bit different than where there's like out and out fraud. You do see that, of course, but the majority of these, I don't necessarily think it's so cut and dried. So we're trying to help mediate, and that's what the Consumer Assistance Program does.
So you don't have the registry. OPR
That's right, OPR.
And then the complaint goes to you, and then you.
Yeah, although often the complaint is coming direct from the consumer. It's not like it's going through the Secretary of State's office, although sometimes it is. But generally, people know about CAP and they'll contact CAP directly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and we're always trying to promote CAP and make sure that people know that it's available to them and it's a free service. So I'm always joking that I have their phone number like tattooed on my arm, because I want everyone to know it, so that if they have a problem or if they feel like they're getting scammed, they can just call CAP and get some help.
Well, that's the UVM piece.
Yeah, it's a partnership with UVM. So it's been in existence for over 40 years, which is kind of amazing.
Okay.
So some of the employees are UVM employees and some are state employees, and we have a lawyer there who's the director and does great work too. So, and can handle cases and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. So The next slide is, describes base reductions and funding increases. So if we want to just go through this one. So we increased our vacancy savings to just reflect reality of what our vacancy rate looks like in the office. We also, the payment portal piece, we have there's processing fees associated with some of the fees we charge. Like, for example, if you're a paid fundraiser, you have to register and there's a fee. Well, now they have to pay for the credit card fee if they are using a credit card. The next one is we, mindful of the governor's request that what our target should be, we made these two changes. The first is reduction in travel and communication costs. And the second is a delayed replacement of our Little Burlington office. We had in the Cherry Street Department of Health building an office that was great. We used it for, meetings. And when we had a case, importantly, we had a lot of cases in Chittenden County. It's been a little bumpy not having it, but it's been fine and we've delayed that. So the next one, if there's no questions, the next is the funding increases. The general fund, 6.1% increase. We also are increasing the consumer settlement fund spending authority by $52,500. In addition, the tobacco fund, a spending authority increase. And I could talk about, I'm the co-chair of the National AG Association's Tobacco Committee. And I used to do the tobacco work in our office. So I could talk all day about tobacco stuff as well. You're never going
to come to if we have.
Seriously, or you need someone to brag about our work, because it is amazing the amount of money that we have now since 1998 when the settlement was done under General Sorrell. The amount of money that Vermont has recouped it's going to be approaching in the next maybe 8 years $1 billion just for Vermont. It's a lot of money. It's already maybe $800,000.
800 million.
Sorry, 800 million. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And then the NEPA increased fees. So that's something that hasn't been increased in many years since since these paid fundraisers and prescribed products were even established. So we're increasing the fees to reflect inflation. And that's the summary of the.
What does NEPA stand for?
NEPA is it's like a inflation index.
Yeah,
It stands for something.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually, the letters don't match with the name.
That's
That's why I was trying to make it work down here. And you're.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I was like, "Oop," but this is what we got from JFO. And so we just use the price index that they sent to look at what our costs should be had they kept up with inflation since they were incepted.
That's so funny. That doesn't match.
I've never seen an acronym that doesn't match.
Maybe in many years ago, they decided to change the name, but they were like, but everyone still calls it NEPA, no problem. It won't be confusing at all.
Jim.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, this is summary of the base reductions and increases, as well as the next page, your benefit rate increases. Are these all part of the governor proposed budget? And so these are separate from the asks for the new positions on the project. Okay, I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I just am mindful of time. I don't want to be going on and on if you guys have it. So I'm going to just keep going through these slides, and then Marcy can get more granular before we turn it over to Willa. So the next slide has our major areas of increased expenditures. These aren't going to be surprising. The benefit rate increase kind of out of our control. Also the Pay Act out of our control. We have a memorandum of understanding with UVM and we rent space from them. So, that's somewhat out of our control as well. We have to have that collaboration. I will say, every state has a consumer assistance program of sorts, I think, but only Vermont is cool enough to have it at the university. And I think that that's probably a great arrangement for us because they benefit with students being there and learning. And we benefit because it's exciting and we're on the cutting edge of things because we're there with young people. But in addition, it saves us money because they pay for part of it, we pay for part of it. But unfortunately, this is an increase this year. So we have the decrease, which I've already touched on, we increased the vacancy savings rate to reflect the reality of what the rate is in our office. We moved the EB5 litigation expenses. The spending authority reduction for,
So this was last year, during conference committee, there was a $43,000 general fund increase to the AG's office to fund our victims advocate. But during that process, the committee forgot to reduce our spending authority elsewhere, so this just cleans the books.
we're trimming up. And then the decreased internal service fund charges.
So that's a decrease in like our space vision.
Oh, yeah.
HR, that stuff. It's a decrease of something I can.
Okay. So if you're all ready for Marcy to get into the weeds a little bit, we can do that. If no one has any questions.
Please.
Yay, we're here to deliver.
And I guess it's real helpful when you have the summary sheets. I mean, we don't need to review, the COLA increases and the benefit changes if it's just what we see in every other line of state government. And I suspect Representative Squirrel would question you if they look out of line from, but if there's any other highlights in your ups and downs that you would like to share, that would be helpful. That's great.
There are not, everything that is material is included in the summary sheets. Honestly, I put these in because it's part of the requirement for the presentation. But I find that some pieces are a lot easier to digest. Yep.
Or do you have questions in any of this?
No, I'm good right now.
So of course, there's a lot more information in the packet. I know you guys can look at it, especially because Marcy did such a great job of making it so clear. So I think that the info that you would need is there. I'm happy to go over any slides that you want to go a little deeper in before we turn it over to Willa. Maybe I should actually highlight, slide 14 has the consumer unit's actual receipts. I always find that to be interesting. The consumer unit is probably, I would imagine, somewhat unusual in that it does bring money into the state. I think for your purposes, that this might be.
You're on page 14.
Page 14. Yeah.
The settlements.
Yes, exactly. Or, yeah, I guess these are all settlements. So happy to answer. And I know what you're thinking. What is a dormy? I looked that up. I think isn't that the lingerie, like a wine of the month club, except it's lingerie? Yep. So these are violations of the Consumer Protection Act, largely, or possibly all of them. That's generally what we do with the consumer unit is Consumer Protection Act. Sometimes there's other things, like the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act. There's other consumer laws that impact our work and that we might be bringing along, but generally it's the Consumer Protection Act that we are handling.
If I may ask a question here. Do you offhand know what finance and management put in their budget as an expected settlement number for fiscal year 26?
How much was it? 2 million.
So that's been pretty standard. And is that 2 million after your recovery cost for your own attorney fees?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm looking at page 13, for example, fiscal year 20, we netted 3.8 million. Fiscal year 4, it was 4 million. Such a round number. And if you look at it, we've been above 2 million except for fiscal year 22. Okay. So 2 million in a normal year is probably a safe number. You obviously don't know ahead of time. Hopefully in an ideal world, there wouldn't be any cases because everything was doing everything proper.
Right.
But
we live in the real world. So notice number 1 on the list is the case I was telling you about Blackbaud and how much more money. That's why, because we had someone, it was they conceived of the case. So that's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, and you can see in here some tobacco work that Amazon settlement on the right, that was a tobacco piece. And of course, there's tech companies. We see some opioid settlements in here. So,
No, I know this is separate from this opioid settlement. We had heard a number of 22 million recently, and I guess that was a revised or a change to the, what was the original settlement that was over a number of years?
yeah, that one was 30 something.
Yeah.
But
It was long.
yeah, so our goal was, as long as the net present value is the same, like I want the money right now, I don't want it in 20 years from now. We had to go back to the drawing board because the bankruptcy court, our settlement was found to be, I don't know if unlawful is too strong a word, but it was like, this isn't gonna fly, you can't do this. It was outside of the law, so we couldn't pursue that, which was a shame. So we went back to the drawing board. I'm incredibly pleased that we got the same amount of money, but sooner, you know, so yeah, I'm.
And when did we get that?
That's the one that I was hoping to be able to say like a year from now, but not really sure. But that'll be soon, and we can provide you with more updates as we.
Does anybody know what we have in the opioid settlement?
Yeah, we have about 12 million.
Of there now?
Yeah, but there are proposals to allocate a bunch of that.
Sure,
in this
no, I
year's
understand
budget.
that. But we can't spend
But it
this
keeps
if we
some,
don't have it in
That's right.
January.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
And is the thinking right now that that would be folded into the opioid settlement fund?
Yeah, I would go through the same process
Same
as
thing.
all the others,
Yeah.
settlements. Yeah. I think that has to be approved by the court, and I'm not even sure if that's happened yet, looking at Rob.
States are still working on the term sheet, so it's not
Yeah.
even final. We have like the broad strokes, but hasn't been paper, is where that stands.
Yeah,
So
so-
I think the original one was 35 million over 17 years.
Yeah.
So that was the term.
So anyway, that's an important one, obviously just relates to the consumer unit recoveries, but I think that that's meaningful because you are the appropriations and this is the money that we're bringing in. Anything else? There's a lot of information in here. I don't want to belabor anything.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Absolutely. I don't want to be redundant, but it would seem to me if somebody said, we have a hard time coming up with base funding.
Mhm.
And sometimes, and we have a hard time with one-time funding, but sometimes it's much more accessible. But if somebody came to you and said, here's a large sum of one-time money, you manage it, but you get to replenish it when you get successes. You'd never have to come back here again.
You mean that would just be a different way rather than we get the money, we send it to you, you decide how to spend
Yeah,
it.
we still get a share of it, but yeah, well, instead of you having to come in, I remember the last Attorney General a couple of years ago, we were here, similar kind of situation. At that time, it was a friendly back and forth with finance and management as to how much finance and management took. In any event, people come before us in this line of work wanting more FTEs so they can do more. And if you had your own one-time fund to manage, would that be more expedient and more helpful to you?
It makes me nervous because the process seems to be working fairly well the way it is. So doing something different makes me nervous. Although I hear what you're saying, like it
And it can
seems
take
more
years
straightforward.
before you succeed.
That's true. And in fact, it usually does take years before we succeed.
Okay, yeah, just thinking.
Sorry, would you liken that to like the complex litigation special fund? So like with that, it's
Yeah.
$1 million, and if we spend it, we replenish it,
That's what I would,
and so this would be like that?
yes. But that's something we can talk about later. It may not be.
Can we go ahead to page 16?
Mhm.
In a couple actually, the slides as I'm looking ahead. This is not environment. What's this money compared to what we just talked about on 14? And where does this go?
So this is from our environmental protection unit.
Okay,
And These are recovered, as you can see by the name, some of these are farms, some of these, Green Mountain Power, they violated environmental laws. Some of these amounts are fairly low. It's like,
$500.
yeah, farm or something like that.
$500.
These generally go either to the general fund, just like the consumer recoveries.
Okay.
But a lot of this work we do with A&R, like it's a referral from A&R, so some goes there. I don't know if Marcy has more to say or if you have more questions, but generally that's the story.
This is separate from the $2 million that we normally budget for.
Yes, that's just consumer receipts. Yeah.
These revenues go directly to the general fund unless they go to A&R for one of their cleanup.
Okay, and then there are small amounts for Medicaid settlement. Do those go back into Medicaid or?
Those go to the Medicaid special fund that we use towards the 25% grant.
So is there there's no certain percentage that might go to A&R?
No, it's just like if there's a, dry cleaner business,
Sure.
you have to clean it up. Rob has something to say.
Yeah, no, if I just, the cases, I used to be the environmental chief of our office too, so I have a real. And, the cases we get tend to be referrals from the Agency of Natural Resources or the Agency of Agriculture. We, in some cases, would recover, like if A&R did an investigation, they might tell us, we have $50,000 in investigation, we'll recover that. Then there's a penalty that goes into the general fund. So it can be case specific based on what happens. I'll only note too, like the small $37 one.
Right.
That's an old case where we had a judgment that they weren't paying. And so that's a tax set off. That's not like we didn't do a settlement for $37, so we didn't waste the time on that. That's just a little trouble, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Representative Moore.
Just following up on that, are the amounts that are retrieved commensurate with the amount of damage done or the remediation that might be necessary to achieve parity?
Yeah, each case is different and has different circumstances. Some people are brazenly violating the law. Some people are struggling and trying to do the right thing and can't afford to remediate or whatever. So I feel each case is different. I don't know what you would say.
I think we're lucky in Vermont, especially in the environmental side of things, that it tends to not be a true like bad actor, like if someone going to dump something in the river just to dump it in the river. It tends to be someone that is not knowledgeable of the law, a farmer that has a tough season, or some, berm breaks and there's a release to the river. So we always look at the harm, we look at the ability to pay, we look at, is it a repeat offender? Did they try to work with the agency? Before it gets to us, the question is, did they try to cooperate with the agency and make things right? Usually the cases that get to us, the answer is no. And so we take all that into account, but ability to pay is a piece of it too, especially with some of the farm cases. We're not trying to put farms out of business, we're just trying to clean up and go forward and send a message to the community that you have to follow the law.
Looking at intent.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Other comments?
I'm holding back because I could really talk for a long time. So I'm flipping through to me because I just love our office and I'm really proud of our work. So I relish the opportunity to come and brag about us. But I know you don't have all day. So I'm going to say maybe now's the time where we turn things over to Willa and have her walk through her portion of the budget. Does that sound?
Yeah, we have to stop at noon for other people's meetings, so that's a couple of minutes fast, but assume, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'll turn it over to you, Willa.
Morning. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with the Appropriations Committee. I think you all are probably familiar with court diversion and pretrial services. In each county, you have a provider with whom we provide grant funds, and directors of those programs will be here tomorrow. So if you want to drop by the cafeteria in the morning, somebody from your county will be there. I wanted to first thank the committee with the legislature. Last year, you provided an increase of about a little under 300,000 that allowed us to increase staffing. So we programs have added a total statewide of 3.5 FTE, which is helping to deal with the caseload. As you know, just within the realm of court diversion, about 20% of the cases that come to the criminal division are referred to court diversion. and about a third of the delinquency cases in family division come to court diversion. So last year, our programs worked with about 2,500 youth and adults coming to court diversion, almost 1,000 youth for underage possession of alcohol or cannabis. Over 1,000 people referred to pretrial services. So those are people going through the court process, and our grantees work with them to connect them to treatment, substance use, or mental health treatment services. And we also worked with about 800 people, some of whom were referred from the criminal division, resolve as best possible the fact that their driver's license is suspended. So it's a huge amount of work, and I just want to say that the people who do this are committed and passionate, have high respect for the programs around the state. The request that our office is bringing to you is for about just a little under $1.7 million. And this is to ensure that we can do the work that is outlined in Act 180 of last year, which is called pre-charge diversion. So historically, for many years, Department of Corrections included in their grants to community justice centers the ability for programs to receive referrals directly from law enforcement. So it's called pre-charge because it was before a prosecutor would charge the crime. The value of pre-charge is it's fast. It's coming directly from a police officer. These are like low-level offenses, first-time offenders. They're coming right directly from the law enforcement officer. Doesn't have to go to the prosecutor's office or to the court. And staff reach out quickly to the victim and to the person, do a restorative process to make amends. Last year, the legislature codified pre-charge, so put in expectations.
Okay, so.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm multitasking. I was trying to find your documentation and now I found it.
1.7 million is your request.
Yes.
That's not in this budget.
Correct.
How does the 119,000 for the position, is that part of that 1.7 million or is it?
That is the 119 is part of the Attorney General's office line item.
Okay.
And then there is a separate line item called court diversion that is only grant dollars. Those funds are completely.
So that 1.7, it doesn't go to your office. It's granted out to the local jurisdictions.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I
No,
understand.
no, that's it exactly, Representative Harris.
Thank you.
Yes. So those are the funds that would be used to provide the service statewide. So historically, this is not being delivered statewide. The Act asked states' attorneys to provide policies about pre-charge diversion. And if you go to the Department of State's Attorney's website, you can see what those policies are. Very briefly, I wanted to explain, if it makes sense, the 1.7 would allow for continued service. About $1 million of that is what we estimate. Marcy and I did this work together to fund existing services, and then the balance would be to expand it in other communities. If currently there are about 3 or 4 counties with quite a bit of pre-charge services. If we don't receive this funding, those services will not be provided because the Department of Corrections is no longer funding this work come the next fiscal year. And what is anticipated is those cases will then go to state's attorney's office for review and prosecution. Not all may be prosecuted, but you will definitely see an increase in court caseloads and prosecutors' caseloads. So, let's see it too.
And then wait, and this may not be for you, it may be that Trevor will know the answer to this. But DOC used to fund this and they stopped. Did their expenses go down as a result, Trevor?
No, there's, best way for me to explain it is they took that pot of money that was going to the community justice centers for the various services they provide, in part, pre-charge, and took what they considered that pre-charge slice and are now they're restructuring community justice centers to provide more of the other services in the facilities in addition to the community. So they basically said, we'll take that money
Oh.
and reutilize it.
So they're repurposing the
They're
money that was
repurposing that
used
money.
for this and that left pre-charge without any money.
Right.
Okay.
So these would be all pass-through grants that they're.
Yes.
Pass-through. What kind of control do you have over the providers themselves? Do you have actual grant agreements for services being provided so that you have some control?
We have grant agreements. We have and in the legislation, current and the most recent, there are provisions that provide all the work that we fund is work that is outlined in law. So we have a grant agreement, a program manual. We develop policies and procedures, and we're reviewing those annually. We advance funds a quarter at a time. The programs submit a budget for the year. Then they request the first quarter of their allocation. They submit a financial report quarterly, and then if they have not spent the full quarter, we don't advance that. So at the end of the year, the grant award isn't a maximum amount, but they only receive the funds which they needed.
So any success failure, if some of them weren't performing as well, if you had more recidivism, or would you look at that for past, for performance there, as opposed to looking, individuals also have a problem too, but I could see where it would be possible if some agency wasn't performing, where the numbers could get skewed, you might watch that.
No, quality assurance is really our key response. I see our role as providing support to programs and accountability. So we have a quality assurance process. We do a visit every 3 years on site. I meet with each program director monthly. We meet as a group monthly. And in the past, we have had concerns about providers, in which case we've issued RFP, and we have had some change in providers due to either programmatic or financial administration concerns.
Great. So it sounds like you're pretty clear on what you want to do and what your calculation methodology is. And that's all very helpful.
I'd be happy to answer questions.
Yeah, I'm looking around to see if anybody else has other questions at this point. And this is Trevor's, and he knows it all well. Been doing this for a while, so we have more questions we can funnel it through him. In the meantime, thank you all for the work you're doing. What a year. Madam Attorney General, you're going to continue to be busy, I know, and all your folks are. So we're glad you're on the case. Thank you all very much for your help, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, we will break for lunch. We're back at 1 with Alex Farrell from Housing and Development and the Treasurer, who are going to talk about the infrastructure post 9 point whatever infrastructure revolving loan. We're still live. We're still live. So we'll be back at 1. Mike, are you going to be back this afternoon, or you have to be off this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to listen in, but I won't be able to